Welcome back everyone. Today's video is the next episode of the Time Chamber series. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. With that said, please drop a like as usual, leave a comment, and let's begin.
Cross my heart and hope to die. Welcome to my dark side.
Vegeta stood tall, his posture unwavering, eyes like daggers scanning the devastation around him. The once majestic landscape of Wukong Mountain had been reduced to a war zone, littered with craters that seemed bottomless. The air crackled with energy, thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning earth. Purple flames danced wildly around Vegeta's body, his aura pulsing with the ferocious dark destruction energy of his Ultra Ego 3 form. Each flicker seemed to consume the very air itself, as if reality was bending under the sheer weight of his power. The ground beneath his feet splintered and cracked, unable to withstand the pressure. And yet, his face remained composed, radiating a calm, unshakable confidence that only he could maintain in such chaos. Opposite him stood Abaddon, one of the dreaded primordial demon gods, his towering form casting a long shadow over the battlefield. The creature was monstrous, every inch of him oozing menace. His eyes, a chilling crimson, gleamed with sadistic amusement. That same wicked grin had been plastered across his face since the beginning of their battle, as though he found the destruction amusing, even exhilarating. After being sealed away from the world for so long, the idea of finding a worthy opponent had been an elusive dream for him. But now, finally, he stood face to face with Vegeta, a mortal who had somehow tapped into powers only the primordial demon gods were said to possess. It was what Abaddon had yearned for, and yet Vegeta's expression was anything but pleased. His mind was sharp, focused, and consumed by a singular thought: death. The memory of Gohan's death didn't sit heavy in his chest. It barely registered at all. There was no room for grief. He wasn't sure what had happened to Goku. Was he still alive? The question echoed faintly in his mind, but it didn't matter. Everything was in ruins. His home planet, the one he was born to rule, was gone, obliterated. And now Earth, the place he had come to call home, had met the same fate, destroyed, just as before, all under his watch. How many times could he fail? The thought seared through his mind, but it wasn't grief that drove him. No, it was pride. His pride as a warrior, the unbreakable pride of a Saiyan. He couldn't live with the fact that Goku, of all people, had sacrificed himself for him. The idea that he, the prince of all Saiyans, needed saving was unbearable. So now, Vegeta stood here for one reason: to prove he was the strongest, to demonstrate the true power of a Saiyan, and, most of all, to show the universe that he, Prince Vegeta, was worthy of his title. "You've been grinning like a fool ever since this fight started," Vegeta growled, his voice low and dangerous, every syllable dripping with menace. "But now, you're going to find out what real power feels like." Abaddon's grin only widened, his amusement clear as ever. "Oh, I've seen your power, Vegeta. It's impressive, I'll give you that. But it's fleeting. Your rage, your strength, it won't last forever. You're only delaying the inevitable." His voice was as dark and hollow as the void itself. "You might possess powers similar to mine, but not all primordial demon gods are created equal. Some of us, well, we're far more powerful than others. And you're just a little mortal. What can you do to a being that was created to be stronger than even the angels?" Vegeta's lips curled into a smirk, his eyes narrowing with an intensity that made the very air around him sizzle. "You think I'm relying on some demon power?" His tone was cold, venomous. "You don't know a thing about what I'm capable of." In an instant, Vegeta vanished. His speed was so great that the sound barrier shattered, the shockwave echoing across the battlefield. Before Abaddon could blink, Vegeta was already in front of him, his body twisting in midair, his foot glowing with the same dark destructive energy that consumed his aura. With a swift, brutal motion, Vegeta unleashed a devastating roundhouse kick that connected directly with Abaddon's side. The impact was deafening, like a thunderclap tearing the heavens apart. Shockwaves rippled outward, obliterating what remained of Wukong Mountain. Massive chunks of earth and rock were torn from the ground, flying through the air as dust and debris filled the sky. The ground itself trembled under the sheer force of Vegeta's attack, as though the planet itself was groaning in pain from the hit. Vegeta wasn't finished. The moment his devastating kick collided with Abaddon, he vanished once more, reappearing high above the demon god with lightning-fast speed. His hands crackled with dark purple energy, swirling and growing until it formed into a massive, glowing sphere. His eyes narrowed, his voice booming through the thick, dust-filled air. "Big Bang Attack!" Vegeta bellowed, hurling the pulsating orb of destruction down toward Abaddon's chest with a ferocity that shook the very air. The impact was enormous. The explosion erupted with a blinding flash of light, the fiery shockwave tearing through the landscape and reducing everything in its path to rubble. Abaddon's massive form was flung backward, slamming into the ground with a force that sent tremors rolling through the crumbling remains of Wukong Mountain. But Vegeta didn't pause to celebrate. Without hesitation, he lifted 2 fingers, locking onto the retreating figure of Abaddon. His eyes flashed with cold determination. "Gaelic Gun!" he shouted, his voice fierce as he unleashed a concentrated beam of purple energy. The attack shot through the sky, tearing the air apart as it hurtled toward Abaddon with terrifying speed. Abaddon, still struggling to rise from the previous blow, raised a hand in defense. The blast slammed into him with full force, sending him skidding backward even further. The ground cracked beneath him as he struggled to maintain his footing. But Vegeta wasn't done yet. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from his spot in the sky and reappeared behind Abaddon. With a swift, brutal motion, Vegeta drove his elbow into the demon's spine, causing a sickening crack to echo across the battlefield. Abaddon let out a sharp gasp of pain, his body jerking forward from the impact. "You're too slow," Vegeta sneered, his voice dripping with superiority. His smirk widened. "How pathetic!" A roar of frustration tore from Abaddon's throat as he swung his massive arm in a wild attempt to catch Vegeta off guard. But the sane prince was already a step ahead, his movements fluid and precise. He ducked beneath the strike with ease, his body moving like a shadow. With a swift, calculated motion, Vegeta delivered a crushing uppercut straight to Abaddon's jaw, sending the demon god staggering back once more. Blood began to trickle from the corner of Abaddon's mouth, but the grin never left his face. If anything, it grew wider. "You're relentless, Vegeta. I'll give you that," Abaddon chuckled darkly, wiping the blood away with the back of his hand. His voice was disturbingly calm, considering the punishment he'd just endured. "But this fight, it's not just about brute strength, is it? There's something else at play here." Vegeta's eyes narrowed, his instincts screaming at him that something was wrong. The feeling gnawed at him like a warning in the back of his mind, though he couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Abaddon should be on the ground by now, beaten to a pulp, but he wasn't. Vegeta's attacks, fueled by the destructive power of Ultra Ego 3, were more than enough to wipe out any opponent. Yet, Abaddon was still standing, still grinning. "What are you up to?" Vegeta muttered under his breath, his mind racing with possibilities. Outwardly, however, he remained calm, his expression betraying none of the uncertainty he felt. His eyes locked onto Abaddon, cold and focused. "I'll end this now," Vegeta declared, his voice steady and filled with resolve. In an instant, he dashed forward once again, but this time, he wasn't going for another barrage of physical strikes. His body twisted mid-air, every motion deliberate and precise. As he spun, energy began to gather in his hands, golden light bursting forth from his palms. He wasn't holding back anymore. "Final flash!" he roared, thrusting both hands forward as the massive blast of energy surged toward Abaddon with overwhelming force. But just as the beam was about to connect, something unexpected happened. Vegeta's energy faltered, his glowing aura flickered and dimmed, and before he could react, his Ultra Ego 3 form dropped. The raw power that had coursed through him just moments ago vanished in an instant, leaving him in his regular Ultra Ego form. Vegeta's eyes widened in shock as the final flash dissipated, canceled out as though it had never existed. He hovered in the air, momentarily stunned. Confusion etched across his face. "What?" Vegeta yelled, his voice filled with disbelief. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was racing even faster. How could this be happening? He had mastered the Ultra Ego 3 form, pushed himself beyond every limit, so why had it failed him now? But how? he muttered under his breath, his confidence shaken for the first time in the battle. Abaddon's laughter echoed across the battlefield, dark and menacing. As he rose to his feet, his body appeared completely unharmed by Vegeta's relentless attacks, his power now more dangerous than ever. The wicked grin never left his face as he dusted himself off, the aura around him growing thicker, more suffocating. It was as if the very air was bending to his will. "You're strong, Vegeta," Abaddon said, his voice twisted with cruel amusement. "I won't deny that, but there's something you failed to understand." His dark energy flared, rippling through the sky like a living shadow. "You've been feeding me this whole time." His grin widened, his crimson eyes gleaming with malice. "Unlike you and those false demons you call gods of destruction, we true demon gods possess something far superior, dark siphoning. The more damage we take, the stronger we become. Every blow you land just makes me more powerful." Abaddon's grin grew even more unsettling as he stared Vegeta down. "So you see, you can't beat me." Vegeta's expression remained stoic, but inside, his mind raced. Dark siphoning, where have I heard that before? The term nagged at him, familiar yet distant. Then, it hit him like a bolt of lightning. His thoughts flashed back to one of the most brutal battles he had faced, a fight against Arak, the god of destruction of Universe 5. Arak had used a similar ability, transforming into something monstrous that had taken all of Vegeta's strength to overcome. "Yes," Vegeta muttered under his breath, the memory crystallizing. Arak had the same troublesome ability. Could these beings be connected? Everything about Abaddon, his power, his aura, felt eerily similar. Vegeta clenched his fists, focusing on the subtle drain he felt with each punch. "He's not just enduring my attacks, he's absorbing them." But then, something snapped inside Vegeta. Instead of frustration, a dark laugh rumbled up from his chest. The sound filled the air, causing the ground to shake beneath them. "You think I can't defeat you?" Vegeta's voice dripped with scorn. "What a joke. I've already destroyed a being with the same abilities as yours before." His eyes gleamed with confidence, and his smirk returned, full of defiance. "This dark siphoning you're so proud of has weaknesses. Weaknesses I've already exploited once, and trust me, I'm far stronger now than I was when I killed him." Abaddon's face didn't change. That conniving smile still etched in place, but Vegeta could sense a flicker of unease behind those red eyes. "To show you how little of a threat you pose," Vegeta continued, pointing directly at Abaddon, "I'll break down your ability's flaws right here." He took a breath, his voice carrying over the desolate battlefield. Number 1. Dark siphoning only works on divine beings, or those who possess God Ki. It doesn't work on mortals without God Ki. But users of this ability become overconfident, thinking that no mortal could ever reach the power needed to defeat a demon god without God Ki. Isn't that right? Vegeta's words cut through the air like a blade. Abaddon's grin faltered for a moment, but then he chuckled, shaking his head. "You're aware of Arak, I see. He played a big part in our plan to escape that damned prison." "Prison? Plans?" Vegeta's voice grew sharper as his eyes narrowed, focusing on Abaddon. "As I suspected, everything that's happened up until now, this entire war, has been manipulated by someone. But who?" His thoughts churned. "It's all connected. Why did the gods suddenly turn on Kakarot?" Vegeta muttered to himself, trying to piece together the puzzle. "And that strange aura that invaded my body? What was that? Why did Zeno only take it instead of wiping us out? Why are these demon gods here in the first place?" Abaddon's cryptic words only deepened Vegeta's suspicions. Someone or something is behind all of this. It felt like their every move had been guided, their every action part of some larger scheme. But by whom? Zeno? The primordial demon gods? There were too many unanswered questions, and it gnawed at Vegeta's mind like an unsolved riddle. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play than what he could see, that he and the others were merely pawns in a larger, more dangerous game. But Vegeta's focus never wavered. His fists clenched tighter, his resolve hardening. Whoever or whatever was pulling the strings, Vegeta was determined to find out. He'd fought countless enemies, overcome impossible odds, and he wasn't about to let anyone control his fate. Not Zeno, not the demon gods, and certainly not Abaddon. Abaddon interrupted Vegeta's thoughts, his voice laced with condescension. "Arak, the son of Azazel, the demon with the blood of both a demon and an angel. That boy had such raw talent. If the angels hadn't interfered, He could have been a powerhouse, possibly stronger than all of us primordial demon gods. Abaddon paused, grinning darkly. But I guess it wasn't his destiny. Still, he served his purpose. It was thanks to him that we escaped. His eyes gleamed as he continued, dismissing the memory. But enough about him. The past is the past. Abaddon's grin widened, his laughter filling the air as he clutched his stomach. What's more interesting, Vegeta, is your confidence. You really believe that just because you defeated Arak, the same outcome awaits me? He shook his head, laughing harder. Arak was nothing more than a child. A strong child, yes, but still immature in his powers. Tell me, Saiyan, do you find pleasure in defeating a mere child? Vegeta's eyes blazed with intensity. A being who's millions of years old is still considered a child? He thought, his lips curling slightly in disgust. The absurdity of it all weighed on him. Abaddon continued, his tone now more serious. Arak may have had the potential to surpass us, but that's all it was, potential. We are primordial beings, Vegeta. Beings that have been alive for millennia upon millennia. We've honed our strength for ages, and you'll soon find that the weaknesses Arak had won't apply to us. As for not being able to siphon mortal energy, yes, you're right, he scoffed. But do you truly think a mere mortal could ever possess the power necessary to defeat someone like me? How foolish can you be? Vegeta, unbothered, let out a laugh of his own. He pointed across the battlefield to where Broly was locked in a fierce battle with Kane. That Saiyan you see over there is a mortal with God Ki. You felt his power yourself, haven't you? I'm confident that even without God Kai, he could take you down with ease. But don't worry, Vegeta added with a smirk. He won't intervene. He knows I want to wipe that smug look off your face myself, and I'm going to prove to you that your dark siphon technique is no match for mine. Abaddon's eyes narrowed, intrigued. What do you mean? He asked. His attention suddenly peaked. Vegeta's smirk deepened, his eyes gleaming with dangerous confidence. I have a strength absorption technique of my own, Abaddon. You call yourself superior? Don't make me laugh. The Saiyan race has no equal. We are the pinnacle of strength, the only race that can continuously break its limits. You're bluffing, Abaddon growled, his grin fading as he unfolded his arms and prepared for battle. His instincts screamed at him that something was wrong. He could sense danger now, an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. Vegeta's expression darkened. His eyes locked onto Abaddon as his voice dropped to a menacing tone. You don't know a thing about us Saiyans. After all, our race didn't even exist in your time. His body lowered into a fighting stance, his muscles tensing for the next move. But let me show you something I've picked up along the way. Without warning, Vegeta's energy changed. His aura shimmered, glowing with a strange, unfamiliar light. His hands moved in slow, deliberate circles, and for the first time, Abaddon's arrogant grin faltered. Something was off, something dangerous. Sensing the threat, Abaddon acted without hesitation. His fist shot forward with speed beyond comprehension. Less than a nanosecond later, his blow connected squarely with Vegeta's face. The force of the punch sent Vegeta flying back, crashing through the air as if he weighed nothing. Vegeta struggled to slow his descent, his fingers clawing at the air for balance, but the impact was too powerful. He smashed into the planet's surface, sending plumes of lava erupting from the ground beneath him, the ground cracking like fragile glass. Abaddon hovered above the impact site, a smug smile forming on his lips. Pathetic, he muttered, convinced he had called Vegeta's bluff. But as his gaze drifted down to where Vegeta had landed, a sudden jolt of terror gripped him. His aura flickered, dimming for just a moment, before stabilizing again. A chill ran down his spine. Impossible! Abaddon roared. My energy, it's being taken. What has he done? Panic began to creep into his voice. Dark Siphon was supposed to be the ultimate technique, created specifically to counter the angels. No being with divine energy should be able to harm him while this technique was active. It was perfect. It had brought countless angels to their knees, draining their strength and making him stronger with every blow. Yet now, standing on the edge of a terrifying realization, Abaddon's belief in his technique was crumbling. How could there be a technique that's superior to dark siphoning? He refused to accept it. His mind raced, searching for an explanation for any possible reason why his technique was failing him. Then, from the crater, Vegeta rose unscathed, brushing the dust from his armor. A wicked smile spread across his face, his confidence unshaken. He looked as though he hadn't taken any damage at all. That's not possible, Abaddon muttered, the fear now fully settling into his voice as Vegeta stood tall, his power radiating like a beacon. Vegeta's voice cut through the air like a blade, cold and unforgiving. "You're dead," he growled. In the blink of an eye, Vegeta used instant transmission, teleporting directly in front of Abaddon. Before the demon god could react, Vegeta grabbed his face with a crushing grip and slammed him violently into the planet's surface. The impact shook the ground, cracks spiderwebbing out from where Abaddon's head made contact, and a geyser of blood gushed from the demon's mouth. Abaddon's body twitched as more of his power drained from him. The situation was growing dire, and it was clear that dark siphoning, his once invincible technique, was completely useless against Vegeta. The reason for this was twofold. Vegeta had an edge, thanks to the unique combination of his abilities. The first was his Ultra Ego Form's passive trait, which allowed him to grow stronger with every hit he endured. The more damage Abaddon dealt, the more powerful Vegeta became. The second was Vegeta's mastery of Spirit Fission, a technique he'd learned from the Namekian Elder, allowing him to take energy from anyone he touched or anyone who touched him. It didn't matter that Abaddon's dark siphoning was draining Vegeta's energy, because Vegeta was taking it back, along with even more. The scales were tipped dramatically in Vegeta's favor. It was a battle Abaddon was destined to lose. Vegeta, still holding Abaddon's face pressed into the ground, spoke with chilling finality. "Your time alive is up," he said, his voice calm and resolute. He raised his free hand, charging up a final flash. The golden energy surged in his palm, growing brighter by the second, as Vegeta prepared to end the fight for good. The scene abruptly shifted, cutting to the fierce battle between Dark Super Saiyan 5 Broly and Full Power Konik. Their clash was a spectacle of raw power, as if two planets had collided in the sky. But it was clear that Konik, despite his immense strength, was on the losing end. Broly's power was overwhelming, and worse, it was increasing at an alarming rate with every second that passed. Boom! The air cracked as Broly delivered a brutal punch to Konik's gut. The sound of the blow echoed like thunder across the battlefield. Konik's eyes bulged in shock, the force of Broly's fist nearly ripping through his stomach. But the blow wasn't enough to take the angel down. Clutching onto Broly's arm, Konik grimaced in pain before vanishing in an instant, using teleportation to escape. They reappeared, flickering across the battlefield in a blur of motion. Konik, now desperate, hatched a plan. He summoned his staff, much like Goku had once done when he wielded Whis' staff. The staff shot into the planet's atmosphere, floating above the chaos of the battlefield. Then, it began to work its magic. The staff had been designed to absorb all the energy radiating from battles, whether it was divine or mortal. It pulled in the energy from both Vegeta's fight with Abaddon and his own struggle with Broly, gathering it into one massive, concentrated source of power. As the staff absorbed this energy, it funneled it directly into Konik, strengthening him with every passing second. His power skyrocketed, his aura swelling with renewed vigor. The angel's eyes gleamed as he felt the surge of energy rushing through his body. Victory, it seemed, was within reach. But something unexpected happened, something even Konik hadn't foreseen. The staff was designed to absorb energy, yes, but it was never meant for a place like this. This wasn't just any battlefield. It wasn't even in the 3 dimensions overseen by Zeno, the Omni King. This was the 4th dimension, the realm of Wukong, a celestial being who had killed countless gods, a being who ruled over this dimension, far outside the control of the Omni King. Here, the rules were different, and the power that lingered from Wukong's battles still radiated in the air. Konik's staff, oblivious to the nature of this realm, began to absorb that power as well. The energy of Wukong's past battles, power that far surpassed anything in the known multiverse, started flooding into Konik's body. His energy spiked rapidly, far beyond what his body was used to handling. It was an overload, a surge of power so intense that even Konik, one of the strongest angels, began to struggle to contain it. His aura exploded outward, growing wildly out of control as the power from this strange dimension forced its way into him, threatening to tear him apart from within. Konik's grip tightened around Broly's arm, the raw power behind it sending waves of pain coursing through Broly's body. The Saiyan let out a primal roar, his voice echoing through the battlefield as the angel's strength overpowered him, causing him to stagger. With a swift, almost effortless motion, Konik swung Broly like a bat, hurling him through the sky. Broly's body shot across space at the speed of light, crashing into a nearby planet with devastating force. The impact caused the entire planet to tremble for a brief moment before it exploded in a blinding flash of light and fire. The sound of the explosion echoed through the void like a bomb going off, and even from where they stood, the fiery glow of the blast could be seen. Broly was caught in the explosion, his powerful form lost in the chaos of destruction. Suddenly, Konik, who had been so calm and composed, began clutching his head in agony. This is too much power, he gasped, his voice trembling. Where is all of this energy coming from? He stretched his arm out, signaling for the power to stop, desperate to control the flood of energy surging into him. But as he looked toward his staff, his eyes widened in disbelief. The staff, a symbol of divine authority, had begun to crack. The once perfect orb at its top shattered into pieces, and before Konik could react, the entire staff disintegrated in his hands, crumbling into dust. The angel's face dropped in shock. This was impossible. The staff held enough power to erase an entire universe effortlessly. Nothing should have been able to destroy it, and yet, the overwhelming energy had consumed it entirely. For a moment, the battlefield went silent as the enormity of what had just happened sank in. The fighting seemed to stop. Even Vegeta, in the midst of his battle with Abaddon, glanced over, sensing something had shifted. Konik fell to his knees, clutching his head in both hands, his screams of pain filling the air. What is happening to me? He yelled in agony. Then, a voice spoke directly into Konik's mind, cold and commanding. How dare you drain my power? How dare you seal my energy along with your own? And most importantly, how dare you try to destroy my vessel? The voice was filled with a fury that made even the mighty angel tremble. Konik's eyes widened in horror as he realized what was happening. This was no ordinary dimension, no battlefield under the rule of Zeno, the Omni King. This was something far beyond his understanding. The scene shifted abruptly to a sacred place deep within Wukong's mountain. The air was thick with an ancient energy, and at the center of it all lay a familiar figure, Broly, now in his base form, unconscious and surrounded by a village of monkeys. These were no ordinary creatures. They were the people of Wukong, the celestial monkey king. Broly's survival had been nothing short of miraculous. The force of the planet's explosion should have wiped him out entirely. But in the instant before the blast, Broly had tapped into something beyond even his wildest potential. He had briefly transformed into the fabled Super Saiyan 6, the final form prophesied in the ancient Namekian book of legend. The energy he had unleashed was like nothing seen before. It matched the intense radiation and gamma burst from the exploding planet and even overpowered it, as if Broly's transformation was a sentient force, absorbing and consuming the planet's destruction. It was a power so incredible, it seemed to defy the laws of reality. What the ancient book of legends had failed to mention, however, was that this form, Super Saiyan 6, was more than just a final transformation. It was the same state that Wukong, the Monkey King, had achieved before he attained true nirvana. Before Wukong became omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, this was the form he had taken. And now, Broly a Saiyan had reached it. The Saiyan race, it seemed, was directly descended from Wukong's lineage. In another part of the multiverse, within the towering palace of the Omni King, the Grand Priest stood in silent contemplation. Though this dimension was hidden, one that even he had not been aware of, he could feel its presence. Through Konik, the Grand Priest could sense the immense life force that had surged through the angel's body. The energy that had coursed through Konik was like nothing he had ever encountered. Even the Grand Priest, with all his power, had struggled to control it. He had felt it surge into him as well, though he had managed to keep it at bay for now. But that brief moment of instability had frightened him, a feeling he was not accustomed to. Then, something unexpected happened. An infinite symbol appeared on the Grand Priest's forehead, glowing with a strange light. In that instant, every remaining angel across the multiverse began to break down into pure energy. Margarita, Vados, Konik, and all the other angels were engulfed in a brilliant flash of light, their forms dissolving into energy particles. The beams of light shot through the multiverse, traveling at unimaginable speeds, converging toward the palace of the Omni King. Within seconds, the energy had made its way back to the Grand Priest. The surge of power slammed into him, the force of it nearly overwhelming. It was as if all the energy from the angels had been returned to its original source, back to him, the one from whom they had all been created. The scene shifted to the palace of the Grand Priest, the Daishinkan, standing still, his face uncharacteristically tense. For the first time in eons, something had unsettled him. As the energy of the angels flowed back into his body, he felt a surge of memories, experiences, and power, but it came with something new, something unexpected. What was that? The Grand Priest muttered, his usual calm demeanor cracking as he struggled to make sense of the energy he had absorbed. His mind raced, trying to process the unfamiliar sensation. No, not what. Who was that? His brow furrowed as he scanned the multiverse for any sign of the source. Where is that dimension? I have no recollection of it. His voice trailed off, and his eyes narrowed in concentration. Placing 2 fingers on his forehead, the Grand Priest attempted to reach out to Zeno-sama, the Omni King. But as he focused, a realization hit him. Zeno wasn't in this dimension. The Omni King had recently traveled to the 2nd dimension, where Quanzi resided. Quanzi, the last 10% of the Daishinkan's power, the part that made him whole, had been left in that realm for reasons only the Grand Priest fully understood. The angels weren't just ordinary beings, a fact few knew. In reality, the angels were fragments of the Grand Priest's own soul, split into pieces to help him manage the vast multiverse. Each angel was a part of him, carrying out their duties across the different universes, but they weren't true living beings. This was why angels couldn't be erased in the traditional sense. During the Tournament of Power, when universes were wiped from existence, the angels had remained, because erasing them would weaken the Grand Priest himself. They were simply extensions of him, and destroying an angel meant removing a fraction of his own strength. Even the law of the angels, the one that stated an angel would be erased if they intervened in mortal affairs, wasn't entirely accurate. If an angel overstepped, they wouldn't truly die. They would merely return to the Grand Priest's essence. That's why the Daishinkan didn't react when Whis had acted on his own, because Whis was simply a fragment of his soul that could return at any time. However, something was different now. The Grand Priest had felt a disturbance unlike anything before, something powerful enough to make him pause. 2 of the angels had been killed by Vegeta, and their deaths had caused him to lose strength temporarily. The energy from those angels was supposed to return over time, as it always had, but something had disrupted the balance. This cannot be, he whispered to himself. He had no choice but to reclaim a vast portion of his power, 90% of his full strength, to prepare for whatever was coming. And now, his full power was even greater than before, enhanced by the experiences and training of the angels scattered throughout the multiverse. Each fragment of his soul had gathered knowledge, power, and wisdom over time, all of it feeding back into the Daishinkan like a complex network of information. He was the main processor, the center of it all, but something had reached out from a place he had never known existed, and it shook him. The Grand Priest closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing thoughts. No dimension in this multiverse could contain that power. What is this place? He could feel the pull of the unknown dimension, the one hidden from even his vast knowledge. The angels, unaware of their true origins, believed they were born just like any other being. Yet they were all created by the Grand Priest himself, each with a specific role, carrying out responsibilities across the multiverse. Despite having their own personalities and free will, their destinies were always tied to the Daishinkan. The angels served their purpose, and eventually, all their experiences, all their power would return to him. That was the plan from the beginning. Quanzi, known as the Mother of all Angels, was the last fragment of the Daishinkan's essence that had not yet returned. She was more than just another angel. She was the final piece of the puzzle, the part that would make the Grand Priest complete once again. But she had a critical role, one that could not be interrupted. Quanzi's task was to guard the Heartstone, a powerful artifact placed within her being. The stone was the key to unlocking the Eternal Realm, where Zeno resided. It was the final step in a grand trial, one that even the Grand Priest had yet to fully comprehend. Without the Heartstone, access to Zeno's realm would be impossible, and the multiverse would be left vulnerable. And now, with Zeno in the 2nd dimension, the Grand Priest felt a new sense of urgency. Something was moving, something beyond his control, and the Grand Priest could no longer take chances. "This is far more dangerous than I anticipated," the Grand Priest murmured, lowering his hand from his forehead. His mind spun as he pieced together the events. Wukong's dimension, Broly. Vegeta's growing strength, the angels dissolving into energy. He stood silent for a moment before a realization hit him like a tidal wave. There was a force beyond the multiverse, one that even Zeno was unaware of. With a deep breath, the Grand Priest made a decision. He had to act. Whatever was coming, he could no longer stay on the sidelines. And that's it for today's episode, guys. If you watched to the end, then that could be an indication that you enjoy the series. So please leave a like on the video. Thank you and take care.